Seventh graders. Today we are going to be talking about volume of prisms and cylinders. So the first thing we need to understand is what volume is. So volume is going to be the amount of space that a three-dimensional figure occupies. And we actually are going to measure this in cubic units. So it's going to be the amount of space, like kind of think of it as the inside of the object, or how much space it's occupying. So some of you from elementary school might remember that for a rectangular prism, you can figure out volume by multiplying length times width times height. We're going to take that, though, and kind of the length times the width is actually giving you the area of the base. And so we're going to start looking at that formula for volume as the area of the base times the height of the prism. And so this capital B will be how we say the area of the base. And then the H would represent the height of the prism, which for a prism is going to be like the distance between the bases. So here says select all the prisms, and for each prism shade one of its bases. So when we look at these, the only one that ends up not being a prism is E. So E is a pyramid. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that out. And then for these others, for the shading of the bases, the main purpose here is just to understand that the base is not always the bottom of the shape. The bases on a prism are going to be those two parallel and congruent sides, okay? So when we look at A is a triangular prism, which means that our base is the shape of a triangle. So our prisms are named for the shape of their bases. So even though the triangle isn't necessarily on the bottom of the shape, it's still one of the bases. When we look at B on our two parallel congruent sides are the shape of pentagon. So this would be a pentagonal prism. And again, that means that the shape of our base is a pentagon. C is a triangular prism, which means that our bases are the shape of triangles. D is also a triangular prism, all right? So again, notice the triangles aren't on the bottom here, but they're still what we consider the bases, okay? And so the purpose of that is, again, just to understand that when we're figuring out the area of the base, it's not always the area of the bottom side, it's the area of one of those two parallel congruent sides. All right, we're gonna skip number 2 right now. We're gonna come to these prisms and cylinders where we're just gonna start applying our formula now. So this first one, all right, first of all, it's good just, again, to identify the shape that you're dealing with so that you know what shape the base is. So when we look at this figure, this is a triangular prism, which means that our bases are triangles. So I need to figure out the area of a base, okay, the area of one of my triangles. So my volume formula is going to be that capital B, remember, area of the base, times H, which is now the height of the prism, or the distance between those two bases. So my base is a triangle, so I need to use my triangle formula, 1/2 base times height. So when I look at this triangle, my base is 8, and then the height of that triangle is 5. And so when I solve for the area of the base, the area of the base of the prism, then we're going to end up getting 20 centimeters squared. So just that triangle is going to be 20 centimeters squared. Now we want the entire volume of that prism. So now we're going to end up multiplying that times the height to figure out how much space it would occupy. So we're going to take 20 times the height of the prism is 12. So this is our distance between the two bases. And 20 times 12 will give us 240. And then in volume, we measure this in cubic units. So this would be cubic centimeters. on the next shape, again, you want to think about what shape you have and identify that. So this is a rectangular prism. So that means our bases are rectangles. You could think, you could think of the base as a couple of different ways here, okay? And again, a rectangular prism, you could just do your length times your width times your height, or think of it as the area of the base times the height. So here, if I think of, I'm gonna think of this rectangle as my base. And so to figure out the area of the base, I would do my length times my width. So 15 times 7 is going to give me 105 square yards because that was area. So now to figure out the volume, I need the area of the base times the height of the prism. So the area of the base is 105, my height is 2, the height of the prism is 2, and so then when I multiply, I'm going to get 210 cubic yards. The next shape we have is a hexagonal prism. So my bases are hexagons. Now we don't really have an area formula, at least not yet at this level, for the area of a hexagon, but we know that our volume formula is the area of the base times the height of the prism. And here it's actually telling me the area of the base. So it's telling me that the area of the base is 30 inches squared, and then the height is 11 inches. And so when I multiply those, I'll get 330 cubic inches. Now when we look at these next two examples, these are not prisms, these are cylinders, but the volume formula is going to work the same way. So to figure out the volume of the cylinder, we still want the area of the base times the height of the cylinder. So on the cylinder, my base is the shape of a circle. So I'm going to have to figure out the area of a circle first. So we're going to want to think back to our area of a circle formula, which is pi r squared, or pi times radius times radius. So on this base here, on the circular base, my radius is 5. That's given to me. And so I'm going to end up with 5 times 5 is going to be 25 times 3.14, and that's going to be 78.5. So now I know my area of the base is 78.5. The height of the cylinder is 12. And then when I multiply those together, I'm going to get 942 cubic inches. On our next cylinder here, all right, again, the shape of the base of the cylinder are circles, okay? So even though it's not the bottom part of that cylinder, the base is still a circular shape. So I'm gonna need to figure out the area of one of those circles first. So my area of this circle is pi times radius times radius. Now here, the 6 millimeters is my diameter, which means my radius is 3 millimeters. So I'm going to do 3 times 3 times 3.14. And I get 28.26 square millimeters. And now for volume, I need the area of the base times the height of the cylinder. So the area of the base is going to be 28.26. The height of that cylinder is this 14. It's the distance between the two bases. And so then when I multiply those, I'm going to get 395.64 cubic millimeters. And last example, again, identifying the shape first. We have a triangular prism. So my base is the shape of a triangle. So I need the area of the triangle first. So remember, triangle, you have 1/2 base times height. Your base the base and the height of the triangle need to be perpendicular to each other. So that's going to be our 5 and the 12 are the base and the height of the triangular base. And so then that's going to give me, the area of my base is going to be 30 square units. And then the height of that prism is 15. So if we think of our volume formula, the area of the base times the height of the prism, the area of the base is 30, the height is 15, and so when we multiply those, we'll get 450, and then since these don't really have units, we can just say cubic units. All right, that's a little bit about the volume of prisms and cylinders. Have a great day.